Hello everyone and welcome to the video. Today, oh, somebody just ran by. Today we're going to talk about what happens after the fall of Port Sion. So, after 20 years happens between, well, for Defiance anyways, 20 years happens between the fall of Port Sion and 20 years into the future until we are sent back in time to try to change the present. To try to change the past. Sorry, not the present. To try to change the past so that the present cannot happen. It's a bit convoluted, but that's what happens. Anyways, so shortly after the fall of Port Sion, the Telarans begin to divide amongst themselves. The Guardians accusing Asha and Orpheal to have caused the fall of Port Sion, while Defiance respond that it was one of theirs, because Elsbeth was a Guardian, that broke the ward. Sorry, my voice just went crazy right there. Let me just drink some water. Right, so infighting between all Telarans, because basically what happens is most Telarans begin to break off into the two factions, right? So the Guardian, because right, yes, because during the fall of Port Sion, there wasn't really so much of a faction fighting. There wasn't really much of a faction division, anyways, because Zareth was kind of the thing that kept the two factions together, fighting together to repel the forces of death and undeath and so on. So without Zareth there to compel them to peace, Orpheal and Cyril, they break off into different paths with their followers. The official separation of the population of Telara into distinct factions of Guardians and Telarans, Guardians and Defiance takes place. So yeah, basically the two factions begin to blame one another, because what happens with like when something bad happens is, you know, the one faction begins to blame the other and the other begins to blame the other, right? So um the Guardians didn't really know what happened during the fall of Port Sion. They blame the Defiance because they don't know what exactly happened, and the Defiance, they don't know exactly what happened, so they begin to blame the other faction. I mean, they knew that Elsbeth was a Guardian, and they knew that Elsbeth was kind of the onset of what happened, but you know, they don't know the specifics. So both factions just begin to blame one another. I mean, that's the way of war. There's always the blame game. 8 years later, you know, there's a lot of civil unrest for 8 years, and then 8 years later, Meridian is ravaged by Guardians. Um, yeah, so if you didn't know, then basically Meridian was officially a defiant stronghold because the Faceless Men offered them, offered them a home. The Faceless Man used to be a Abyssal Tide Lord, but he sort of realized the error of his ways and realized that he did not want to be there, and so he decided to, and he was the Tide Lord of whatever Meridian was before. Some people say that Meridian was an abyssal stronghold, basically what was under the current Meridian. Some people say that the current Meridian, used to be the abyssal stronghold. Now I don't know exactly, because there's two arguments. Some people say that the reference is that um, what was underneath Meridian was the abyssal stronghold. Like there might be caves or something underneath of Meridian that we never discovered. And other people say that, you know, other references say that Meridian itself used to be the abyssal stronghold. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know if or what it is that the Abyssal Stronghold was. But basically, the Faceless Man started driving away all the Abyssal presence in Meridian and welcomed the Defiance into the Stronghold. And so, yeah, Meridian, 8 years later, is ravaged by Guardians. The Defiant survivors lock themselves up into a fortified life factory in Free March to continue their research on ascension by machines. So yeah, Basically, I think this is the life factory that they're talking about, because basically, when you're sent back in time, you are sent back in time. Here, right? Yes, this is where you are sent back in. No, this is not it. Sorry, that is not it. Where are you sent back in time? Ah, there. This is where you, when you finish up your Terminus quest lines. In the past, I can't show you Terminus because I already graduated from that place. But basically, when you are sent back in time from Terminus, this is where you are sent back in time. This is the machine that you wake up from, and then you kind of quest around like here. You quest like around here, and you start like attacking the guardians on the other side of this bridge, and then you discover the life factory where you are, uh, where you are reconnoitered into what was going on in the past that you are supposed to change the future from. Anyways, so this is, I think, the life factory that you wake up from in Terminus. And basically, you do a whole lot of quest lines to return back to the past, this present, basically. And then you meet Silver as a hologram here. It's great. Anyways, this is basically this is a beautiful place where you meet a whole lot of. What the fuck? I never saw that spider. Why are they doing stuff with a spider? I do not want a spider defiant. I do not want that. And what's this? Oh, that's a goblin. And that's a human or something. Great. Another spider there. I never really paid attention to this place, at least to this point. Oh, this is a spider woven human female. Great. Out of flowers. Nice. Alright, so anyway, sorry. I just saw the spider and I went, what the fuck? Anyways, so, basically, yes, you are locking them, blah, 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 hang on. Yes, so when you're in Terminus as a Defiant, right? So you are in Terminus, and for 8 years before that, or sorry, for 14 years before that, 20 years, sorry, 20 years before that, you locked yourself up into a fortified life factory in Free March to continue research on ascension by machines. In essence, though, the whole 8 years after the fall of Port Zion, in essence, the Guardians' victory is total because every day is a battle for survival for the Defiance. I mean, there's no food in here, right? Maybe there is. Maybe there's food in this. I don't think so, though. So, there's no food that you can see here, and there's not much out there. There's not much out here. There's like mining going on, and maybe some flowers that you eat, and maybe some animals that you can hunt, but there's not many animals here. The only thing is Bomanis. The only thing that you can see is Bomanis, these guys. Beautiful wolf things, wolf humans, and some flowers. In any case, so yeah, the Guardian's victory is kind of total because uh, there's not much to survive on. It's not that great living here. Um, and then 14 years after the fall of Port Zion, right? So 14 years later, Orfeel disappears without a trace. There's a report from one of the machines that serves him. The master stands at his tower window for hours at a time. Mutterings included the following: I must perfect ascension. Could I even assign it to a living mortal? Tested on myself, of course. Why himself? You'll learn about that much later, because basically Orfeel is not what he says he is. He is not a human being. He's not an S for real. He is not an S. Let's just put it that way. Ooh, what's that? I just saw that. Oh, nice. It's a wolf or dog or something. Fun. All right, so yeah, basically Orfeel disappears, and then 20 years after the fall of Port Zion, Silver Valis, remember the guy who's Orpheus' assistant or student or something like that. He discovers the way to reproduce ascension. It's the end of the world pretty much, though, as Elspeth has found another way to bring back Regulus. And yeah, it doesn't look too good 20 years into the future because there's death at we are currently at death's door because look at this. Death people, death people, and oh, there's no death rift anymore, but there used to be. So here-ish, there's like a death rift that starts up every once in a while. And yeah, so we are afflicted by death at our door, basically, at our doorstep. And so it's extremely, extremely dire, the situation at this point. And yeah. So we are at death's door. The Elspeth has found another way to bring back Regulus. She brings him back, I think, from Magitech, if I remember correctly. The Defiant Ascended are sent back in time using Orpheus' failsafe machine, which is this thing. Hang on, which is this thing that we come out from, right? So this is the failsafe machine. Whoops, sorry. This the failsafe machine to avoid the disaster. So we're sent back in time to avoid the disaster that we are the last living witnesses to, because basically Silver dies in the future. He dies because everybody dies. We are the only survivors from the past. We, the defined player, bring back to the main game the secrets of Magitech Ascension. So when we come out of here and then we talk to the people in the past life factory, we bring back with us the secrets of Magitech and life ascension. Okay? And then yeah, so we bring back the secrets of Magitech Ascension, and then the moral of the story. What's the moral of this story between the infighting and the civil unrest and the civil war, basically? Because the Guardians really hate the Defiants for some reason, and the Defiants hate the Guardians for some reason. There's always going to be in life, in current life, in real life, there is that kind of hatred between religious people and people who say believe in dinosaurs or believe in the Big Bang or whatever. There's that there's a lot of hatred between these two groups because I'm actually the type of person who believes in dinosaurs and all that stuff because I believe in science. I believe in science brings us answers to the questions that we have about our past, and the religious people, they just believe in what happens in the Bible, generally speaking. So there's always going to be a lot of unrest and a lot of tension between two groups who believe in very fundamentally different things. And so, but however, there isn't much of a Talara to save without defiance for Guardians. Sorry, with the blah, blah, blah. Yeah, without Guardians, there isn't much of a Talara to save, and without Defiance, sorry, there isn't enough of Guardians to save Talara. The factions, they need each other, because the thing is that there's always going to be a need for for religion, for something to believe in, and there's always going to be a need for something to rely on, because the thing is, gods are fickle. The gods of the vigil, they're very fickle. They, sorry, they don't always answer, and that's basically why the Kalari, they split off from the rest of the elves. Sorry, I'm gonna drink a little bit. Right. So that's basically why the Kalari, they split off, because they were like, well, we believe in the spirits and we don't really believe, because the spirits are answering us in the here and now. Whereas the gods of the vigil, they are fickle, they don't always answer right away, and when they do, it's cryptic. The spirits, the Kalari, they believed that they were much more direct. And that's why they split off from the rest of the elves. And the Bami, they believe in the wind, the elements. Basically, they believe in the elements, and the humans, they believe in the here and the gods, because they think, there's something we are destined for. And for all both factions, they need each other because one believes in something greater up there that's helping them. There's like inspiration. And the other faction, they believe in something that helps them in the here and now. So both are important in war. And so in war against a common enemy, for example, like Regulus or whatever. So there is a need for both factions. And I'm not a person who says like, oh, fuck religion, we don't need them. But I'm the type of person who says, well, it's important to have them. I don't believe in it, but it doesn't mean that they cannot help us. And so, anyways, that's why when I joined during Storm Legion, like I had heard of Rift before, and I had heard of um, the whole faction division and so on, and I wasn't really into the storyline at that point because I was like, well, there's always going to be fighting between each other, and I'm not really into PvP, so I don't need that in my in my life. Like I don't want to play something like that. But when I heard like during Storm Legion that they were both helping each other, I was like, yes, I'm totally into this. And well, it was free to play at that point. So, and then I got a good computer, and that's what inspired me to start playing because I was like, well, at least now they're fighting together for against a single common enemy. And I was right into that. Anyways, so that's the moral of the story. Like, there's always going to be a need for, religious inspiration, and there's always going to be a need for scientific improvement in life. And that's why, like, as somebody who grew up in a post-religious, um, how would I say, like a post-religious people, population. I'm Quebecer, right? And in Quebec, until the 70s, until 1970s, there was religion. The clergy was ruling, was in schools, was in hospitals, was in politics. So the clergy was running the province of Quebec. And at some point in the 70s, I don't know how, but the general populace was getting tired of it. They were getting tired of the corruption. They were getting tired of the division of the centralized power. They wanted both things to be decentralized. They wanted religion to be out of politics because basically the clergy was running in their own advantage instead of the advantage of the people. And so, as a post-religious population, we started to rebel against religion. We started to rebel against the clergy specifically. It's not like we hate religion. It's more like we are disgusted. We as a people, especially the French Quebecers, because not so much the English or the immigrants who came in later, but the people who were there back in the day. Like I wasn't alive in the 70s, but I heard a lot from my parents and my grandparents and so on. Hearing the stories from people who were there in the 70s, it's basically it was a rebellion against what the clergy was doing to them because they were everywhere. And so they started to just get disgusted with how things were. And to this day, our curse words are religion based. Very different from France French. France French, you'll have like putain and like this like dirty words, right? But in Quebec, our dirty words, quote unquote, are religion based. So you'll have like hostie and calice and Chris and everything is religion in our curse words because of how disgusted we were as a people with how the clergy was running things because it was always in their advantage. So, anyways, moral of the story: you can't have a centralized religion power, and you can't have a centralized, in my opinion, a centralized machine-based power. Like, I don't think that AI is specifically like the only way to go. Like, for example, if you take Tesla, for example, recently in the news there was an accident involving a self-driven Tesla. And the thing is that at this point, or maybe never, they cannot be. They cannot be the only way to drive a car. It cannot be only self-driven because at this point specifically, um, and I work in the car industry at this point because I'm a graphic designer for car dealerships. So you hear a lot of stories in the industry about how, is self-driven okay or is it not okay? Like at this point, personally, I do not believe that self-driven cars um, the the answer to our to all the accidents and the road accidents and so on, because self-driven cars communicate with one another. It's hard to communicate with a car that is not self-driven because there's the human problem of we do what we want. We do, sometimes we go faster, or sometimes we don't, follow road law. Sometimes we go over lines, sometimes, etc. So self-driven cars, they try to answer the laws of the road, but with regards to non-self-driven cars, they cannot communicate and they cannot, for example, they cannot ensure that the non self driven car is going to follow the law. So it's very difficult for them to communicate with a non self driven car, because there's a human problem of we'll do what we want. So, anyways, at this point, I don't think AI is the answer because not everything is AI. But then again, if everything was AI, would it turn against us? Would it try to kill us? So that's the moral of the story. Like you can't have everything of one because um because we need a counterbalance. So anyways, tell me what you think. Tell me if you think that religion is the answer or if AI is the answer. And the reason I started playing a Defiant was kind of to kind of not answer, but to kind of um, mimic or immerse myself like in the steampunk uh, vision, but also to kind of rebel against religion because I am a Quebecer and I am a product of the post-religion um, population. So that's kind of why I started playing Defiant, but also because it's interesting to see what the future could be with machines. Why do you play a Defiant and why do you play a Guardian? I'm interested to know. So let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.